While I iced their cake and ironed linen napkins, I heard my daughter hiss that she couldn't wait for the old woman to die, and my son-in-law chuckle about a $200,000 mortgage, so I smiled, cleaned the whisk, and started counting hours. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. 48 hours later, under rented Edison bulbs and the weight of their perfect vows, I lifted a glass, because clocks are honest and math is blunt. The truth I carried would land like a signature on a line they never thought I'd read. I'm Evelyn Hart, 63, a bookkeeper who counts other people's money, and, until that afternoon, rarely counted my own grudges. I live in Cypress, northwest of Houston, in a one-story brick ranch with a maple that leans over the driveway like it's listening. I bought the house with my husband, Mark, in 1998. He died 3 summers ago, and the mortgage that once felt like a promise turned into a metronome. When I say I was preparing their anniversary, I mean I was the one printing place cards, steaming a lace runner, and baking a lemon cake because Lena, my daughter, always said my frosting was wedding grade. I didn't mean to overhear it. I'd gone down the hall to put away a box of disposable champagne flutes when I caught their voices in the spare room we turned into a staging closet. I can't wait for the old woman to die, Lena whispered, the way people whisper when being cruel feels safer if it sounds soft. Only after she pays the $200,000 mortgage, Tyler said, and they both laughed, like interest and oxygen were the same thing. I didn't drop the box. I closed the door quietly, took one breath, and felt something decisive slide into place. I've watched numbers move whole lives. I know when a line item changes the ending. Their anniversary party was in 2 days at a venue called Magnolia Barn off Luetta Road, and I'd prepaid half the rental as my gift. That gave me 48 hours to decide whether I was a wallet with a pulse or a woman with a plan. I started with paper. My home office is a real thing. File cabinet, stapler, highlighters that mean different categories. And I pulled the standing folder marked house. The latest statement put the principal at $198,674, interest at 6.25%. The payoff through Friday would be $201,113, including per diem interest and a $45 recording fee for the release of lien. I circled the number and wrote could, not should, because words matter and so does posture. Then I opened my other folder, estate. Mark and I had updated our will after his diagnosis, but grief makes you sloppy and trust makes you slow. Lena was listed as personal representative because it felt practical at the time. I had never thought she'd see me as a gate to kick down. My grandson, Caleb, 6, was listed as a contingent beneficiary. I looked at that line and imagined his shy smile and the way he counts out gummy bears like a treasurer. I wrote protect Caleb on a pink sticky note and stuck it to my monitor. But then I found a string of text messages from last winter. Me, lending them $2,500 to replace a busted AC, just until February. February passed. So did March. Payments dribbled like a leaky faucet, then stopped. I don't keep score unless someone hands me a scoreboard. They just handed me one. I called my lender, Brazos Home Mortgage, from the kitchen with the phone on speaker and a pen ready. I need a payoff letter by email, I told the rep, and gave my loan number. She verified me, promised a PDF within the hour, and asked if I wanted wire instructions. Yes, I said, because even if a bluff never gets played, it still sits in your pocket like a warm coin. Except I knew a bluff wasn't enough. Whispered contempt doesn't shrink if you shrug at it, it grows like mold. So I called a lawyer. I Googled estate attorney Houston revocable trust no contest clause and found Delgado and Chen in the energy corridor, with reviews that sounded like relief. Ruth Delgado picked up on the second ring with a voice like a librarian who knows exactly where everything is. I told her my situation in clean bullet points because that's how I think. We can draft a revocable living trust, pour-over will, durable powers, medical directive, and a transfer on death deed for the house, she said. Flat fee, $1,850. We can sign tomorrow if you come at 9. Harris County Clerk will record the deed same day if we walk it in. I looked at the calendar. Tomorrow was Thursday. The party was Friday. Book it, I said, and read her my full legal name the way someone reads coordinates. One problem, I didn't want a war, I wanted a record. So I opened a fresh spiral notebook and wrote the date, June 12, 2024, and the sentence I'd heard, word for word. I described where they were standing, what I was holding, and the timestamp from the microwave clock. Keeping a contemporaneous log is what auditors do when they expect a future argument. It turns memory into evidence without turning your house into a courtroom. That night, I watched the neighborhood lights blink off through the kitchen window and did a stupid thing that wasn't stupid at all. I took out Mark's old leather portfolio, the one that still smells faintly like his cologne, and tucked in the mortgage statement, my notebook, and the sticky note that said "Protect Caleb." I slept with the portfolio on the nightstand, hand on it like a lifeguard's hand on a whistle. The payoff letter hit my email at 7:11 a.m. I printed 2 copies, highlighting the funds due and the wire instructions. I didn't know yet whether I'd send the wire, but the shape of the move mattered. If I couldn't pay it Friday, I could at least make sure that when the last payment left my account, whenever that was, the deed wouldn't route through the 2 people planning my funeral like choreography. I got to Delgado and Chen 5 minutes early with coffee and my driver's license. Ruth wore navy and clarity. We sat at a tidy conference table while her paralegal, Jonah, slid tab documents toward me. Revocable living trust of Evelyn a Hart, pour-over will, durable power of attorney naming my sister, Joanne, medical power of attorney, HIPAA release, transfer on death deed naming the trust as grantee, and, ultimately, Caleb as beneficiary when he turns 25, with a spendthrift clause so nobody could borrow his future. The no contest clause sat like a white picket fence. Anyone who challenged would forfeit their share and receive $10 total. I initialed every page, signed where flagged, and handed over my debit card for the $1,850 fee, because some protections are best bought before you need them. But then Ruth asked, almost casually, "Do you want to revoke any previous beneficiary designations on bank accounts?" I thought about the view-only login I'd once given Lena for emergencies and felt my stomach go cold. I left the office and drove straight to Texas First Credit Union. I opened a new account, moved my autopays, and set the old account to manual only. I changed my online passwords. I set a verbal passcode with Brazos. I removed Lena as my emergency contact with my insurer and put Joanne there instead. It felt like closing windows before a storm. You still can't control the thunder, but you keep the rain off your face. At lunchtime, I parked near the Harris County Clerk's office on Preston, took a number, and watched people file deeds, marriage licenses, and brand new promises. When the clerk called me, I slid over the transfer on death deed and paid the $26 recording fee. She stamped it with a date that didn't care about anyone's feelings. "You'll get the original back by mail," she said. "The index updates by tomorrow." I thanked her. My hands shook a little, not from fear but from the weight of a gate swinging shut. I went home to frost layers and iron napkins. I kept my face neutral when Lena texted a photo of a gold 10 balloon and asked if I could pick up sparklers too. "Of course," I replied, and added sparklers to the list below safety pins, which is where I put things I don't want to use but know I'll need. That evening, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. "This is Ethan from Brazos Home Mortgage," the voice said, a little too cheerful. "We had someone call in for your payoff letter, a Tyler Kelly, claiming to be authorized on the account. He's not. We flagged it." He lowered his voice. "You might want to add a notation that we're to speak with you only." I wrote down his name, the time, and the word attempted with a box around it. "Thank you," I said. "Please put a hard note on the account." When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, hands flat, and let the anger pass through me like a wave. Anger that stays makes you sloppy. Anger that passes makes you clean. Except I wasn't finished. I called Adult Protective Services, not because I needed them to swoop in, but because I wanted a case number. The woman on the line was gentle and practical, asked if I felt safe, and told me to document any financial coercion attempts. "Elder financial exploitation is underreported," she said. "Even if you never need us, having a record helps." I wrote down the case number and tucked it into the portfolio under the trust. Friday arrived like a gavel. I woke early, made coffee, and pulled up my retirement account. I've never loved numbers for themselves. I love what they can do when you decide what matters. I had enough in my rollover IRA to pay the mortgage off and hate the tax bill later. I could also keep paying monthly and let the clock run. The part of me that wants neat endings stared at the transfer button until the screensaver winked on. I called the bank and got a live person in wire transfers. I'd like to wire $200,113, I said. She verified me twice, read me the Fed reference number, and told me Brazos would post it the same day. I thanked her and wrote the number in my notebook like a prayer that would stand up in court. I put on a navy dress Mark loved because it made my shoulders look strong. I pinned on a small silver brooch shaped like a compass. I loaded the car with cake boxes and the place cards I'd made by hand. In the rearview mirror, my eyes looked like someone I recognized from 10 years ago. Sure, not pretty. That was enough. Magnolia Barns smelled like sawdust and fairy lights. The event manager, Shay, showed me the head table, and I set the runner and the plates the way Lena liked. Guests trickled in. Tyler's volleyball friends, Lena's co-workers from the dental office, our church ladies. The DJ tested his mic and eased on a playlist that sounded like clean nostalgia. Lena floated in, luminous in a tea-length ivory dress, and air-kissed my cheek. Tyler followed, pulling me into a hug that felt like a sales pitch. "Mom, you outdid yourself," Lena said, squeezing my arm. "Seriously, you're the best." I looked at her and saw a little girl blowing out birthday candles. I looked harder and saw a woman who had tried on the word orphan the way some people try on a coat in a store mirror. We ate. We clinked. We watched a slideshow of photos I had scanned and color-corrected on my old laptop. Caleb ran under the tables with a pack of cousins, stopping to show me a napkin folded into a rocket. I kissed the top of his head and tasted the future I wanted for him. Steady, unremarkable, safe. Shay tapped the mic and asked for toasts. People stood up and told stories about cheap apartments and road trips and the way Lena and Tyler always made everything look easy. I held my glass and felt the room tilt toward me. The DJ handed me the microphone. "Short and sweet," he whispered. I smiled at him and at everyone else and at the version of me who used to keep peace by keeping quiet. 10 years is something, I began. It's 2 presidents, 1 solar eclipse, and a lot of laundry. It's also 100 decisions you make when no one's watching. I let the quiet settle. 2 days ago, I heard something I wasn't meant to hear. I was icing your cake and I overheard my daughter say she couldn't wait for the old woman to die, and I heard my son-in-law say, only after she pays the $200,000 mortgage. I didn't look at them yet, I looked at everyone else. I love you both. I raised you, Lena. I cheered for you, Tyler. I still will, in the way that love sometimes looks like a hard boundary and a clear record. But then I turned to them. I took an envelope from my purse and held it up. "This is the payoff confirmation for my house," I said. "As of 9:42 this morning, the mortgage is paid. The release of Leanne will record next week." 2 gasps. 1 laugh that choked halfway. I held up a second envelope. "This is the trust that now owns the house. It has a no contest clause. The beneficiary is Caleb when he turns 25. Until then, I have a right to live there for as long as I'm breathing and walking. If anyone tries to move me like a piece on a board, the trust becomes a wall you can't climb." I set the envelopes on the head table, neat as invoices. The room did what rooms do. It decided who it wanted to be. Some people looked at their plates, some looked at me with a kind of fierce pride. Lena's face went pale, then pink, then white again. Tyler tried to smile, the smile misfired. "You're making a scene," he said, loud enough for his friends and for me. "We were joking." "Here's another scene," I said, keeping my voice low and crisp. I held up my notebook. "I keep records. The lender called me yesterday to report an unauthorized attempt to access my account. I documented it. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services, not because I need help today, but because I intend to need none tomorrow. If you choose to love me, love me. If you choose to hate me, do it from your own address." I raised my glass. To 10 years. To honest clocks and blunt math. To truth spoken kindly and early enough to change the ending. I took a sip. It tasted like lemon peel and relief. Shay, bless her, started the music, and the DJ slipped into something bright. The party continued because parties always do, with a slight drag, like a kite tugging in new wind. I cut the cake. I handed slices to people who made room in their hands. Lena stood near the photo booth, fingers tight around a bouquet she'd been using as a prop. She didn't come over. Tyler did, 10 minutes later, jaw set. "We'll talk," he said. You don't do this to family. I didn't, I said. I did this for family. I just removed you from the definition until you earn your way back. Except the story doesn't end with a toast and a moral. Stories end with paperwork and follow through. The next morning, I moved my remaining automatic payments to the new account and closed the old one. I printed the payoff letter for the house and set it on the mantle, a talisman with numbers instead of beads. I emailed Ruth to ask about filing a notice of revocation of prior powers just to be thorough. She replied within an hour with a PDF and a filed stamp from the clerk's office. I watered the maple until the soil went dark. Then the text messages began. You humiliated me in front of everyone, Lena wrote at 9:03 a.m. You ruined our night. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. At 10:15, Tyler sent, return the $4,200 we invested in the venue or we'll sue. I scrolled quickly and went back to my notebook. I wrote down the time, the wording, and the fact that I had paid the deposit directly to Magnolia Barn from my account. I emailed Shay for a receipt in my name. She sent it within the hour with a note, you did the right thing. I printed it and slid it into the portfolio. By Sunday, the nuisance escalated. Small things, petty things, Lena posting a half-truthy status about toxic elders, Tyler leaving a voicemail in his professional voice, saying words like defamation and undue influence. I breathed and vacuumed and made a grocery list. Monday morning, my ring of the doorbell showed 2 bouquets on the stoop and no notes. I left them outside, then called the non-emergency number for the sheriff and asked about trespass warnings. They live across town? The deputy asked. Ma'am, you have every right to tell them not to come onto your property without permission. I wrote down his name and the incident number like stitching a seam. But then the real complication hit, right on schedule for the midpoint surge Life likes to deliver. My credit card company called about 2 charges from Friday evening. $1,244 for an after-party lounge and $320 for a limousine upgrade, both swiped on a card only I carry. Were these authorized? The fraud rep asked. I closed my eyes and pictured the head table and how my purse had sat on the chair during a dance. No, I said, and felt a clean anger return. They were not. The rep reversed the charges provisionally and told me to sign an affidavit within 10 days. I thought about letting it go. Then I thought about my hands frosting a cake while people plotted my expiration date. I printed the affidavit. I signed it. I mailed it with tracking. I also scheduled a consult at the Harris County Dispute Resolution Center because sometimes you don't need a war, you need a well-lit table and a neutral person who says, speak in turn. The mediation was set for the following Thursday. We met in a small room with a white noise machine humming outside like privacy itself. The mediator explained the rules and gave me a chance to start. 2 charges appeared on my card during your event, I said, placing the receipts, my affidavit, and Shay's email in a stack. I'm seeking repayment of $1,564, plus the $50 filing fee, by the end of the month, and a written acknowledgement that you will not attempt to access my financial accounts again. I didn't look at their faces. I looked at the mediator's pen, which had a tiny chip near the clip. Lena's voice cracked. You're really doing this? She said. Over a party? Over a pattern, I said. And over proof. Tyler tried to argue the card had been left available, as if my purse were a vending machine, as if I had invited theft by trusting air. The mediator asked him if he authorized anyone to use my card. He didn't answer with words, which is the same as answering sometimes. We took a break. We drank institutional coffee. The mediator brought us back in and wrote out a simple settlement, $1,614 due by June 30th, payable by cashier's check at my bank branch, with a clause that default would allow me to seek a civil judgment for the full amount plus costs. We both signed. It looked like a receipt you might keep too long. They didn't pay by June 30. Of course they didn't. I filed in small claims. The clerk wore a sweater with daisies. The hearing date came 3 weeks later. The judge was tidy and impatient in a way I respected. I brought my notebook, my receipts, the signed mediation agreement, and the fraud affidavit, each in a plastic sleeve because paper deserves dignity when it's doing heavy lifting. Lena didn't show, Tyler did, in a suit he should have steamed. He tried to talk about family feelings. The judge asked for exhibits. I handed mine over. Tyler had none. The judge signed a judgment for $1,664. He rounded, plus court costs of $107. You can file an abstractive judgment, the clerk told me afterward. It attaches as a lien to non-exempt property if he buys any. I filed it because sometimes you don't get your money, you get a line on a ledger that follows someone until they pay attention. Except the money wasn't the prize. The prize was a corrected story. Lena and I started counseling with the associate pastor from our church, a woman named Shar who doesn't let anyone hide behind adjectives. The first session, Lena cried so hard she couldn't talk. The second session, she said, "I hate that I said those words." The third, she said, "I hated feeling like a kid even at 34. I listened. I didn't fix anything except my posture. We made rules, no talk about the house, no asks for money without a spreadsheet, no old woman humor, ever. Tyler didn't come. That told me what I needed to know. In August, Brazos mailed the release of lien. The stamped piece of paper looked almost casual. I drove it to the clerk's office myself and watched the clerk scan it into the system. "Congratulations," she said, because she understands ceremony. I took myself to lunch at a diner Mark used to like. I sat at the counter and ate a BLT that tasted like a normal day returning. 2 weeks later, a fat white envelope arrived from Delgado and Chen with the final estate binder. It held every protection Ruth had promised and a letter to Caleb, sealed, to be opened when he turned 25. I put the binder on the top shelf of the hall closet and told Joanne where it lived. I also wrote a simple house rules note in friendly blue ink and taped it inside my pantry door. "If you come over, you're welcome. If you want to borrow, ask 3 days ahead with amounts and dates. If you want to help take out the trash without being asked. Love, Mom." By September, the rage had cooled into something sturdier. I taught Caleb how to measure wood. We built a small birdhouse together on the back patio, him holding the tiny nails while I started them, then his hands following mine on the hammer. "We're making a home for something small," I told him. He nodded gravely, the way 6-year-olds do when they understand exactly what you mean, even if you didn't say it. Lena came by one afternoon with a grocery bag of apologies disguised as casseroles. She stood in my kitchen and looked at the lemon zester on the counter. "I was cruel," she said. "I don't know why I did it. I wanted to tell her I did. Fear, scarcity, the easy lie that other people's money solves your soul. But I kept my words simple." "You were," I said, "and you can be kind now." "I don't want the house," she said, surprising us both. "I want you." I believed her. Not completely. Enough to sit at the table and split a casserole into 2 pans, one for now, one for the freezer. Trust doesn't return like a parade. It returns like mail after a storm, late, damp at the edges, but readable. Around Christmas, a certified letter arrived for Tyler, a notice that a judgment lien had slowed his application for a business line of credit. He left 2 voicemails that sounded angry and then very tired. He eventually delivered a cashier's check for $1,771. Principal, costs, a little interest, at the bank branch, sliding it across the counter without meeting my eyes. I took a copy for my records and filed a release of judgment, because even kites want the string cut when the wind changes. On New Year's Day, I stood in my driveway under the leaning maple and felt the peculiar quiet of a house that knows it's safe. I thought about the moment in the hallway, the cake, the whisk, the clock. I thought about the party, the toast, the envelopes like small doors closing softly. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt accurate. People like to imagine revenge as a trapdoor beneath someone else's feet. Mine was a ledger. If you had looked over my shoulder, you'd have seen straightforward entries, $1,850, to an attorney who knows what matters, $201,113 to a bank that wanted its due, $26 to a clerk who stamps futures for a living, time spent in rooms where the air hums with rules. You'd have seen a grandmother's name on a deed no one can bully, a boy's name in a trust nobody can test lightly, and a daughter's name written, on a line that now means love, can start again, provided it leaves its knife at the door. I still bake lemon cake for birthdays. I still iron napkins when it's worth it. Sometimes I stand on my porch at dusk and listen to the neighborhood settle, the distant sound of someone's TV, the squeak of a swing, A dog yipping twice, as if counting. When I raise my glass these days, it's usually just tea in a chipped mug, but the toast hasn't changed much since that night under the fairy lights, to honest clocks, to blunt math, to truth spoken kindly and early enough to change the ending, and to the quiet after, where you get to live.